All right, we got a new study, Ian, claims
that violent video games cause increased aggression in the youths.
Now, remember, there's always causation versus correlation, and a study worth its balls will never say causes. They'll say there's a correlation, right? All right, this is a fucking thing. Okay, this is new analysis claims to confirm that violent video games is to have a direct causal link to physical aggression. I got to read this now. The study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences claimed more than 17,000. The study studied more than 17,000 adolescents from age 9 to 19. So that's a very good big population size. So I like that. For 7 years, between 2010 and 2017, it concluded that playing violent video games does lead to increased physical aggression over time. All right, meta-analysis reviewed 24 studies from multiple countries, including the USA, Canada, Germany, and Japan. Okay, it's a meta-study. All right.
Yeah.
Jay Hull, lead author of the study, said the impact was relatively small, but statistically reliable. His own prior study found that playing video games roughly doubles the risk of being sent to the principal's office for fighting, and it was included in the meta-analysis. A lot of people ask, do these games really cause these kids to behave aggressively? I would say that it is one possibility. The other possibility that it's a really bad sign. If your kids are playing these games, either these games are having a warping effect on right and wrong, or they have a warped sense of right or wrong, and that's why they are attracted to these games. Either way, you should be concerned about it. So again, it's correlation, not causation.
Yes.
So this article is actually taking it out of context, because a real study will say there's a correlation, not a causation. And he's saying that. So shame on you, GameSpot, for saying causation. You're not knowing the difference between causation and correlation. Take a statistical class. All right. So, of course, the E3 and Entertainment Software Association, people that do E3, they rejected the findings. Of course, they're going to say that. So, again, it's chicken or the egg. If I'm a kid and I like violence, I have a predilection to violence, will I play violent video games? Probably.
Yes,
I'll be more attracted to Mortal Kombat versus Flappy Bird.
Yeah.
But the question still remains, though, if I'm not predisposed to violent thoughts or aggressive thoughts, if I play them more, will I be modeling myself potentially after the behavior I see, or at least the attitude? That's a question that still we have to ask. You know, it's tough, because how do you now we're getting into statistics, and we're getting into, you know, survey methods and things like that. How are you going to do a direct placebo effect? How are you going to do a pool of kids that don't do it versus introducing it? It's going to be almost impossible, I think, to really do this over time.
Yeah.
It's going to be incredibly hard to, let's get kids that we know don't have a predisposition to violence or aggressive behavior. Let's introduce violent video games to them.
Right.
And then see what happens. First of all, that's unethical to do that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to do that.
Yeah, you can't exactly be like, let's introduce violence.
Let's have kids watch violent movies and see if they become violent. Let's scare the fuck out of kids.
Right.
It's kind of hard to get a sign off on that and have that be an ethical study. It's kind of hard. You can't just do any study you want anymore. You have to, there's ethics in doing these studies. So this is going to be tough. And I'm not saying, I'm not going on one side. There could be, maybe you have a mild-mannered kid that starts playing it and maybe he feels it in himself. But over an entire population pool, it may not be statistically significant.
Right.
Of course it could happen to some kids. Absolutely. Kids can be influenced by anything. I don't think anyone's denying that. But saying by and large, that's another argument entirely to make. So a meta study is nice and it gets at it, but even the guy behind it says it doesn't mean it's causation. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's too tough to explain. It's too tough to determine without, well, basically doing what we had discussed, which is unethical, to actually determine whether or not these children are just choosing violent video games because it's their nature.
Sure. It's tough. And then we look at violence in other countries, and violent video games are played the world over, but doesn't mean that there's not a lot of, massive shootings in other countries. We still lead the way, even though the same games are available everywhere. They're available in Europe. They're available in Asia. You know what I mean? So
right.
It's not just the games. There's other things involved, I think. And again, you can't introduce. I'm trying to think of a way you get little Johnny, little Sally to start playing Mortal Kombat and seeing
to just stumble upon it.
Just seeing decapitations and spines ripped
naturally,
out, and then see if that has an effect on them. You can't do it. You can't do it. So there's always going to be a dispute. Let's see. The American Psychological Association Task Force found in 2015 that violent video games increase aggression, but didn't have enough evidence to conclude that it caused an increase in criminal violence. So aggression, violence are two different things. If you're more aggressive, you're probably more likely to be criminally violent. Doesn't mean you will be. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. The study suggests that the increase of violent behavior may be relegated to schoolyard fights without necessarily then going on to cause an increase in criminal behaviors. We may never solve this. It's like the licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop. The world may never know.
I counted once.
You counted once? What was it?
It was like 300 something.
Did you really do that?
Yeah.
You're that insane that you actually did that?
Uh-huh.
Now,
But I mean,
were
it's gonna
those
be
licks
different.
all the way around or just on one side?
Right, and that's what screwed me up. I started, like, I was trying to do it all the way around, and then I did, you know, then I decided I was never going to fucking do it again.
And that owl's got a fucking beak on him to crack that sucker open, too.
Right, and that's
He's not
what I
using
did.
teeth.
I mean, because I can just crack down on him pretty easily, so I just kind of did it until I was like, right, that's Tootsie Roll.
How crestfallen was that child after that owl stole his Tootsie Roll Pop and ate it?
1, 2,
Three.
3. I'm a criminal.
That kid, talk about increased aggression. That kid could have become a fucking school shooter after that incident. Or at least an owl shooter, I would say. That kid was going to cry. That commercial, we saw that commercial every day when we were children.
Yeah,
At least I
we did.
They played that commercial for like a good 8-9 years, from like the mid-'80s or early 80s to like the early 90s. They played that commercial.
If not longer, yeah.
That commercial fucked me up more than violent video games. That's what that happened.
Fucking
Stupid ass owl with his dumb ass hat.
sucker thief.
Sucker thief. All right, anything else to say, Ian?
No.
Run off the goddamn rails with this podcast. I love these sort of podcasts.
I'm starving.
We're starting intermittent fasting.